And hello, everyone. Good evening. It's Thursday, and if you're following the Letecia Stauch trial like we are every day, today they had no court. It's Thursday, and they've been taking Thursdays off. Well, that's a good catch-up day for us because, well, we were here Tuesday, and we tried to do all of Friday and Monday, but Kim and I 2 hours in, and we left a few of those witnesses off. So we're going to start with that. We're going to start with the ones from Monday. We're going to start with all of the leftover ones from Tuesday, which were from actual Monday's court date. Now, if you'll remember, we did go over forensically the autopsy reports that Dr. Ignacio did, and the main thing from that testimony was that the new information besides the wounds and how certain things had happened. We did go into that. Very graphic, very, very unsettling day for everyone in court. The Woodcocks were crying, everyone was upset. It's very graphic. Well, new information that came out was that Gannon Stauch had oxycodone in his system. Um, that the toxicology report came back. And then Al Stauch took the stand and said that, yes, he had an injury to his fingertip a while back. He did not use all of the prescription. And that prescription bottle with some pills left in it was located in the nightstand of in his room, in the drawer of his nightstand. And so there was access to it. But that was the new information. Okay. After on Monday, after Dr. Ignacio left the stand, remember the jury did have questions about decomposition and things like that, and about freezing of the bodies and things like that. Um, remember the body was found in March. It was very cold. He went missing January 27th, 28th. The investigation started in full. The body was found on March 20th. Could have been out in the cold the whole time, and they were asking about the rates of decomposition and things like that. Well, after that witness, we went on to Special Agent Andrew Cohen, who's been working with the FBI since like 2014. He had been asked to join the El Paso Sheriff's Office in this search for the missing child. The FBI often works in regards to missing children, especially because of their broad reach and their wide nationwide network. They're often involved in states and counties in investigations for missing children. So they joined the Colorado in that investigation. He was the lead agent responsible for the case and for maintaining the case file. He made all of the investigation decisions, and was also sitting on the advisory witness in the case. He will probably testify more than once. Okay. He's also been involved in a lot of the wiretapping. He was the one who was actually monitoring some of these wiretaps that were going on, and his testimony was about how you get the wiretaps approved, what wiretapping actually entails and involves. Is it considered an intrusive investigation? It's not always used. It is an intrusive type. He says that there were techniques that you use. If you hear something that's not really related to the investigation, you back off for a little while and then you go back in, back and forth. The whole thing is recorded, and then they can go back later and listen. Wiretaps record all the phone calls, and then you can listen to them later. He points he did identify the defendant, Letecia Stauch, as being the person on the wiretaps that he heard, and that he could recognize her voice. They entered in exhibit 688 through 691. 681 was actually a disc with recorded wiretap calls from February 18th. In 89 was also the 18th later in the day, and 90. They are all labeled with the dates all the way through the 18th, all the way to 2:47 in the afternoon. Okay, the call was made from Letecia's phone in this particular wiretap conversation that they're going over. And it's basically the testimony about the fake polygraph. Okay. Letecia had contacted the company and said that she did not get a confirmation number for a test that she paid for. There was a male representative on the other end of the phone that asked for her name. She gave her name, and they started looking her up in the database, and they started to say, "Well, we're going to email you those results." We did. And she said, "Well, I do not have them." And he says, "Well, I'm going to go resend them. So give us a call back in a little bit if you don't get them." Okay. So then they looked and they said that the number that was called by Letecia for this was fakepolygraph.com on the web. Okay. So Letecia made another call, a little while later, asked to confirm where he sent the results. She wanted to confirm the email address. Again, the male representative on the phone says he will send them again in another 10 to 15 minutes. And she says, "No, please reconfirm the email address." And he has tishalin206 at yahoo.com, which is exactly what she confirmed. Okay. And he said he would send them again. All right. So then she calls again. She still hasn't gotten the results, she reports to him. At this point, he pulls her up and he says, "Unfortunately, your results are blocked by management due to the content of the questions. So we're not going to be able to send you this report. It's due to our terms and conditions that any illegal activities, we reserve the right not to send the report. No refund is due." She says, "Well, what do you do now? Do you delete it and go on about life with the money?" And the representative says, "Yes." And she says, "Oh, okay, I got you." She is asking about the block again and says that the terms and conditions say that you can ask about infidelity. And he says, I'm sorry, what do you mean? Like, can you please clarify that?" And she says, "Well, the question about infidelity and stuff like that is what the questions were about." And he gets confused and he says, "Well, what were your questions?" And she says something about infidelity and eye color and questions at the bottom. And clearly says that, "Well, that's not what came through. I'm not quite sure what happened there." Okay. And so then Letecia starts reading him the terms and conditions where she's getting this quote. And he's like, "Yeah, well, you would be able to do that, but the questions that were submitted were not about infidelity." She said, "I didn't submit questions that were not about infidelity." And he says, "Well, we'll need to look into what happened." And he asks for her name on the report again. And then she says, Stauch, Tisha. Okay. He recalls talking about the polygraph results during the call. He also, Detective Cohen, Agent Cohen actually reported that during the talking about the polygraph results calls, she also was talking to Al at one point, and she told him that she passed a polygraph test and that she was innocent. Okay. There was no counter on there on in regards to that I see. Okay. We're going to go on now to the second, which was Christina Cervante. She's a crime lab specialist, and she used to work as an evidence technician for the El Paso Sheriff's Department. Her duties were to take in evidence and as it was collected from a scene from the officers, to respond to calls when evidence was needed to be collected. She also received phone calls from the public in reference to getting property back. Her whole testimony was about Letecia um, trying to get her uh, property back out of one of the vehicles. She actually called. Cervante is actually going to testify that Letecia called and actually claimed to be Harley at the time. Even though Christina Cervantes had never spoken to Harley, she did recall Leticia's voice. Okay. And she doesn't know how much their voices do sound alike, but she did know the difference between Letecia and her. Okay, she did remember Letecia coming into the lobby once, and she asked for her property back, but Cervantes had to get in touch with an investigator, and then clearly explain to her that within criminal cases, none of the evidence is returned to anybody. None of the property that is seized is returned to anybody until after the case is closed. Now, with civil suits, you can get your stuff back as once it's all logged and entered and things like that, that there was a process. She said, but without a higher authority ordering her to give back any of the property, she could not get it back. But she did recall a phone call that she received from someone claiming to be Harley, which she says was Letecia, saying that her book bag had her birth certificate and social security card in there. She needed her MacBook for school. She gave her name as Harley Hunt, described the book bag and everything that was in it in her Jetta, wanted it back, told about a diamond rings that were in there, a pink folder that had all her documentation, and that she needed it because she was a flight attendant. She couldn't work without her passport because she was a flight attendant. Okay. Cervantes again said that none of the evidence could be released without written authorization from a higher authority. And that's it. And then she gave the person on the phone, who she believed to be Letecia, Detective Bethel's number, who was in charge of the case at the time, through the El Paso Sheriff's Office. um, Christina Cervantes also said that she found it very odd that the person claiming to be Harley would actually say they were a flight attendant because Harley was not. Excuse me. Our next witness was Detective Michael Ballman. He's a digital forensics detective, and his job is to find and preserve data that may be evidentiary on electronic devices such as phones, computers, and DVRs. Okay. He uses a device to gather all of that information, and he makes what they call, they're now going to talk about the Celebrate files and the gray key and Axiom for extracting data. Celebrate is a combo of hardware and software. It plugs into a USB on your computer. It has a second function to go through data and turn it into a readable, and here's the key, sortable database. They're talking about how they got the information off of the phones to make it searchable for the detectives to look through everything. Okay. It goes through pictures, text, instant messages, internet searches, all kinds of activity data. Locations are all extracted and put onto a disk. A Celebrate report is created, and detectives can use that to search for things. They can use it to give guidance on what to extract. Detectives can actually ask for specific things, and they can create reports accordingly. Okay. It also came out in the testimony that he uses IMEI numbers to identify which phone goes with which extraction. That's how they track all of the stuff and the information going through. Okay. They had analyzed Letitia's phone, a rose gold iPhone 8. It was labeled as Exhibit 222, a Blu-ray disc labeled as the extraction from Tisha's phone. Um, During the extraction process prior, uh, they did say that, they do a physical actual look at it just to make sure that there's no damage, and so they do mark that on the report that there was no damage to Tisha's phone at the time. The second was another iPhone. No damage was reported on the second phone. That was also linked to possibly be, Tisha's. Okay. On cross-examination, the defense wanted to know how much Celebrite could actually sort through. And it seems like there were like 400 of the 4 million applications that are available. So it is limited in some aspects, but it will pull years of information if your phone is old or if you've pulled information from another device onto your new phone. So, in other words, if you get a phone and then you use your key to bring over your stuff, it's going to bring everything. So it brings over the history and everything all the way over. Okay. So that was just in securing that how they got the information onto the disks for the phone. That was Bauman's testimony. We then had Sergeant Kurt Smith, and he's been with the El Paso Sheriff's Department since 2006. He's currently the Sergeant of Major Crimes. He investigates homicides, and he's involved in shootings, kidnappings, all kinds of major felonies. Okay. Back in January of 2020, he was the Special Victims Unit Sergeant in the same investigative division, but he supervised 6 detectives who were doing crimes against children and things like that. Everyone in that division was assigned a task or two on Gannon's case. Smith was assigned to do the Celebrate extraction, so he was also with Bauman in doing this. Okay, he's had training. They talk about his training in 2014 and that's when he was in a transfer to the investigation division as a detective, and he trained to operate the Celebrite software. And he's done about 75 different downloads of cell phones since then. Okay. He's testified that Celebrite gives different options for extractions, that it creates an image or a copy of the phone that goes on the computer. Once the info is extracted from a phone, it is generated into a PDF type report that is burned to a disk and placed in evidence. And a copy was given into evidence. And then they did actually mark that Exhibit 227. It's a Celebrite download, and it's of an iPhone 6. And this evidence is labeled as kid's phone, possibly Gannon. Once we got the phones entered into evidence, we then went to Detective Christine Perry from the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. She had been with the El Paso Sheriff's Office for 9 years. She is a special victims unit detective. She is involved in all cases involving children or at-risk adults, and also sex crimes. In January of 2020, she was a detective in the financial crimes unit. Gannon's investigation was everyone on deck. In 2020, she had been assigned to look at the social media for any little thing she could find in regards to Gannon. She was looking on Facebook using an undercover Facebook profile used solely for investigative purposes. She joined multiple groups searching for and discussing Gannon in any way. She was present for one of the interviews with Al Stauch, but her main job at the time was watching the Facebook groups. Um, she was there when Al called with more information and spoke to Detective Bethel, and that he had found the that info about the Tiguan not being at the residence or the elementary school where Letecia had said, and that Al had reported that was troublesome for him. So, detectives then began to look for the Tiguan. They searched the Mesa Ridge High School. Christina Perry went to the Colorado Springs airport. Sometime after that, she searched for it because she obtained the rental car there. Al had told them about her rental, and they searched short-term and long-term rental records in the area, and the Tiguan was not located. Perry also had spoken, Detective Perry had also spoken to Harley, Letecia's daughter, with several other detectives at the time had also tried, but Harley has been refusing to talk to them and would not go to the office to give information. At about 10 o'clock on the 28th of 2020, Christina Perry was at Gannon's home with several other detectives. They were Detective Perry was at that time basically doing what she called scribe duties. She was transporting evidence. She was taking notes. She had been at the home on the 28th for several hours, and she does recall speaking to Harley. Harley would talk about her career aspirations or anything she was doing with work, various little things, but she would refuse to talk about anything regarding her brother Gannon or the missing. Christina Perry also testified that a trash can in the backyard had a burned square of carpet inside of it. A different trash can had at the back of the house had a candle in it with carpet fibers, a sock, and other items melted into the wax. At this point, defense jumps up and objects about the evidence that they found in the trash, but it got overruled by the judge. There was nothing to it. They also took swabs from shoes, from both shoes, and a pair of black and white women's Nike shoes that we heard testimony prior that did appear to have some pink staining on it. Swabs were also taken of a light switch in the basement hallway outside Gannon's room, and also swabs of Gannon's bed in Gannon's bedroom and on the east wall of the basement. More swabs of the bed, swabs of the exterior side of Gannon's door. All of those swabs were sealed until someone at the lab opens them. She testifies the process there. Okay. On the 29th, she was there, and she was waiting at the sheriff's office, waiting for Letecia to show up for an interview, which she did not show up to until after Christina Perry had left for the day. When she did arrive, she arrived in the Tiguan, one that they had been searching for, obviously, and they made statements that it looked freshly washed. There were water droplets all over it, and it was a clear day as far as weather. There was no rain. Based on Leticia's interview, Perry helped obtain another search warrant for the home based on statements she made that she considered to be inconsistent. They canvassed dumpsters at the university shopping center also because they were notified, as we have heard in other testimony, that Letecia was at Petco with Gannon. So they went across and they found a lot of stuff there. Letecia had rented the Nissan Altima. They knew that. Prosecution says it was actually her aunt on the actual rental. So Perry got a warrant to put a GPS on that vehicle due to concern that she would flee to family that she had out of state. They then made note that a large amount of money had been transferred from Harley's account to Leticia's account in the amount of $2,600. At that point, also based on what she was finding out on Facebook, she found that there was a family member of Leticia's posting on Facebook. And Perry became aware of the photo of Gannon in his bed with the red blanket with the snowflakes on it. And it had not been located during any search of the residence, nor with the sheet that they saw on there and or the pillow that they actually saw. So they actually had this picture posted on the Facebook, and then they were looking for these items, and they had been to the house and searched, and they weren't there. Okay. She then went to the El Paso County transfer station, the dump, and they searched for all of these items and things that they thought that they were seeing pictures of, but they did not have any recollection of seeing at the house or have anything in the laundry room or anywhere. They found mail addressed to Gannon Street, but there was no garbage or anything that they could tie to the house. Okay. She was asked to watch a surveillance video from the neighborhood. So she was, they pulled all of the cameras in the area. We've heard that before. Some of them, she reported, are motion captivated. Some of them just record constantly. And during that, she reported that, they saw the cars coming back and forth. They were able to identify all of the family vehicles. They identified when Lana came home, when Lana was riding a bike, when she left with Harley, but they didn't show her anywhere in between. They entered into evidence exhibits 41 through 47, which were all also just video of the neighbors from their cameras in the area. Okay. And they're showing the black Tiguan. They're showing the red truck that Al drove. They're showing the little Jetta that Harley drove. They're showing the vehicles coming and going. They can confirm through testimony when Harley said that she left with Lana, that they can see it documented. Okay. They can see another clip from evidence number 41. It's about 2 minutes long, and they played it. And it was Letecia getting into the Frontier and moving it from the street and backing it into the driveway. And at that point, they see Gannon, and he walks to the back of the truck. They then play another clip from another disc that's like 3 minutes. And during this clip, they're showing that, it's like 10:13 in the morning, and Gannon gets into the back of the truck, and they leave at 10:15. Okay. They don't come home again on film until 2:20. Letecia steps out of the vehicle. A shadow is seen in the photo. It appears to be Gannon stepping out of the vehicle also. At 2:35, you can see a shadow from the back passenger seat on the opposite side of the truck. The Tiguan backs all the way into the garage at 2:24. Okay, this is from a different surveillance video. And then she backs it to the garage. The people across the street, a car goes by. They've all got it time stamped. It's about 2:24 in the afternoon. Okay, at 2:24, you also see a leg drop very clearly. At 3:11, a school bus with Lana on it comes by. You see Lana get out. Okay. Lana walks away from the front door to the sidewalk. She's outside for like 19 minutes. It is assumed that Gannon and Letecia are in the house. You can see Lana then afterwards ride away on the house on a bike. Exhibit 47 is Harley coming home on film at 4:27, and then she and Lana leaving at 4:51. Exhibit 220 is two clips from January 28th at 8:13. of L leaving for the airport, L being Letecia, leaving for the airport in her Tiguan. The other of Harley reparking the Jetta. Clip 2 is about 2 to 3 minutes long. The actual clip of Harley reparking the Jetta is timestamped at 8:51 a.m. At 10 p.m. on January 28th, Perry arrived at the home. Okay, this is on cross examination. They confirmed what time she actually got there. And they said that there were many detectives there at the same time. There was a multiple amount of Texas, and that Atlanta and Harley were actually located at the house at that time. Defense also asked how long Harley had access to the crime scene overnight with no authorities there. And that is not a known term, but they do know that she had been in and out of the home. They do know when she did come home and that she was at the home when they arrived. There were utility workers on the street. There They did not report hearing any gunshots. There was no one who actually said that they actually heard any gunshots. Lana was seen on camera leaving the home on a bike and leaving with Harley, but not seeming come back to the home in between. At this point, redirect was done, and they reconfirmed when did Letecia call the police, which was just after 6 o'clock, and also reported that is it unusual that no one heard the sound of a gunshot? And they said no. There are ways to muffle a gunshot sound, and in other gun crimes, it's normal for some people to hear gunshots and others not to. They did not know that Gannon was shot until his autopsy. So it's not like they were asking people directly, they were just saying, did you hear anything strange? They weren't speaking about gunshots or anything in particular, and no one brought it up. They then moved on to testimony from Detective Tim Farrell. He's also with the El Paso County Sheriff's Department. He had been there with 10 years. He's 3 years as a detective. In January of 2020, he was assigned to the Special Victims Unit. He arrived also at the house on the 28th at 10 o'clock with many of the other detectives. Harley was the only person on the scene at the time when he arrived. Lana had been taken for an interview. Okay. They had been called the day earlier for a runaway. Not a lot of information when they got to the scene. So they were getting information sporadically from the other detectives and from people in the house. So they took photos. Detective Farrell is reporting that they took photos of the entire scene. They looked for anything out of place or something or any kind of lead. The entire home was searched. They found no loose shell casings. That's been reported previously. There was no visible signs of blood on the home. Okay. They're submitting pictures, exhibits 240 to 251. They are all pictures of the home. Okay. They show the laundry room with a pair of sneakers, women's sneakers on the washer. And these shoes are the ones that are reported to have pink residue on the bottom of the soles. It looked like blood that had been washed out, but not come out all the way. This is from the detective, Tim Farrell, is saying this. Okay. There was also pink residue in the indentions on the bottoms of the shoes. And that pink residue looked like it had been soaked into the foam of the soles. Exhibit 246 and 249 are swabs from the bottoms of the shoes. There's also a pink towel in the washer. That is Exhibit 250. Exhibit 252 to 261 are photos of the house and the trash cans at the back of the house. Okay, 252 starts with the living room. The carpet has been cut out and the padding was melted down to the concrete. The couch liner has been melted and there was a waxy substance left on it. Exhibit 254 is a square of carpet that was cut out, a 2x2 square. There's no smell of fire evident. Exhibit 255 is a photo of the trash cans in the back of the home. This is where they found a lot of the carpet scraps and the things that were melted with the wax. The backyard has a 6-foot high privacy fence, and that was noted by the detective. Exhibit 257 is a picture of the piece of the 2 5-foot carpet, and it is pulled out of the trash can, and they're showing all the evidence that they took out of there. Okay. You can see that there's fibers on the candle, and it did not match the carpet or the candle, the fibers. Okay. The cloth in the candle might be a sock then from determination. Gannon's bedroom was noted to be very clean. The inside handle of the bedroom door had a brown smear on it. There was no smell to him, but Detective Vihel smelled something. So they took swabs. The pictures from exhibits 263 to 270 are photos of Gannon's bedroom. They showed discoloration on the top back left corner of the mattress, unknown at the time what it was. Investigators were told Gannon sometimes had bathroom accidents in bed. Gannon's door was all the way open when detectives arrived. Detective Farrell closed his door and found the brown smudge on the doorknob. Uh, ex- e- Exhibits 271 and 272 are photos of firearms from the master bedroom and from under the bed and in the closet. Something seemed off at the scene, so they photographed the firearms. There were two shotguns and an AR style short barrel pistol. On January 29th, Detective Farrell also saw that the Tiguan was freshly washed and still wet. Exhibit 273 and 276 are going to be photos of the VW Tiguan. The top of the vehicle was dry with dirt and dust on top. It looked like the back of the car had been washed out, but nothing was really found inside the car. Detective Farrell was part of the surveillance team following Letecia and points her out as the defendant and identifies her in the courtroom. Um, he also testified that she had been taken to the hospital for a SANE examination due to her claim of being sexually assaulted, and that she left that hospital before those examinations were performed. Okay. He also testified that Harley had been the one to drive Letecia to Marshall's. Undercover plainclothes agent followed them into the store. They tried to visually see where the cell phone they had a warrant for was located. This is all when they were getting ready to actually seize the property and actually get the phone. Had a warrant for Harley's phone. Detective Farrell was ordered to seize the vehicle and the phone for evidence. Both Letecia and Harley were using the same phone while inside Marshall's. And remember, we heard testimony about Letecia trying to get away from the other detective. Sergeant Gaston was chasing Letecia. You know, Farrell witnessed this. Letecia sprinted away from him, joined the pursuit. She was ignoring commands. Farrell was in khaki pants, a black polo with his name on it, and a badge on his back. He is the one who drew his firearm, and she stopped immediately and began obeying commands. Because remember, Sergeant Gaston was undercover. Letecia shouted to Harley, "Don't tell them anything," which Farrell heard and again complies with the previous testimony from Sergeant Gaston. On February 1st, Letecia went to Walmart in Trinidad, Colorado, and went to the electronics department. He's testifying this from prior testimony of her being watched. On cross examination, they wanted to know who took the swabs of the Nike shoes, and Farrell said that he did. The lead detective on the case decides what evidence that they test, and the case of the lead detective was Detective Bethel, who no longer works at the El Paso Sheriff's Department. Overseeing the case from the office was Lieutenant. Oh, Farrell interviewed multiple people in the course of the investigation prior to going to the Stauch home. Names were given, but I'm sure of all the relevance. They talked to neighbors, they talked to people from Facebook that were posting, they talked to everybody. At the time, detectives were not using body cams. He does now wear one with his uniform. All right. The search, they were asked why they didn't pull over Harley and Letecia before they got to the store, and Detective Farrell testifies that the search warrant was still in process, that they didn't get the final signature and confirmation until they were already inside the store. They did swab headrests and door handles of the vehicles. They took soil samples from the floors of the cars. On February 1st, he did a follow-up of the Nissan Frontier, which was Al's, and Al had drove it to the evidence facility and turned it in, and swabs were taken from the bed of the Frontier. So all the cars were then actually in the evidence facility. Farrell took screenshots of the video from Walmart in March 2020. They then go on to another detective, Peter Vigil, um, who was also with the El Paso Sheriff's Department for over 13 years. He's been a detective for the last 3. In January 2020, he had just transferred to the Special Victims Unit, and he was there when detectives arrived at the home. They knocked several times. No one came to the door. They waited outside. Lights came on in the garage, and then Harley and Lena came out and talked to them. At the doorway of Gannon's room, he did smell ammonia or bleach. He is the only one saying that he did smell cleaning supplies, but he didn't see any. The smell got stronger as he went farther into the room. He swabbed a stain from Gannon's bed. Exhibit 278 are the swabs from the bed on the east wall. Exhibit 687 are 2 more swabs from the mattress in Gannon's room. He enters in Exhibit 277 is a photo of the storage room taken at the home. Exhibit 312 is still from the 27th. It's the storage room where boxes have been moved. The boxes were not stacked up on January 28th. Okay. That is all of the detective testifying and getting the evidence in on how the condition of the room when they all arrived on the 28th and how they acquired the evidence that's being used to prove that Letecia kind of knew what she was doing. Basically, the submitting of all the evidence isn't for guilt because Letecia has actually stated she's guilty of this crime. She's just claiming that it's due to insanity. And so they're actually going through the process of everything that they found to show that she was actually sane at the time, that she could answer questions. She was acting a little evasive. She was acting like a guilty person, but she was not acting like an insane person. Okay. The last witness from Monday was Spencer Wilson. And Spencer Wilson is a reporter. He's a multimedia journalist. He does video and audio. You know, he's like a one-person show on the side of the road. And we showed you that video before. This is in regards to the interview that he did with Letecia, where she wouldn't show her face. Okay. So he says that they were on the sidewalk covering a search in the neighborhood that day, and he saw a big moving truck or a utility van and a car pulling out of the neighborhood. They rolled down the window and they started to chastise him for the way he was covering the story. That person who chastised him was Letecia. He said they could talk about it. It took him about 5 seconds to realize that it was her. Well, she was angry that he and other members of the media were there, and she said he was doing it all wrong. Okay, so they drove to an empty parking lot. They drove to an empty lot to do the interview. She had a clip on microphone. Leticia's only condition was that her face wasn't on camera. It was his idea to have her back to the camera so he could still so it could still be watchable on TV instead of just an audio. The clip on microphone will pick up audio even when someone walks out of the frame. Okay. This is what he was explaining as they were asking him questions. Okay. He goes on to testify that everyone was very pleased over at his newsroom that he got the interview. His goal was to keep her talking. Part of his training at when he went through training at the University of Missouri was to keep people talking when they're saying but don't agree with it. Okay. So he wasn't really agreeing with everything she said, but he was kind of just saying things to just keep her going. This is how he's testifying. He states that she seemed more focused on how she was being perceived publicly than helping to get information out on Gannon. He spoke to neighbors who had more concern for Gannon. He said he had been doing interviews throughout the day, and most of the people he spoke to always talked about Gannon and what was going on with that. But Letecia only talked about how she was perceived. Okay. They do play the interview, and we've seen that too, and I will link it again down for you later. But the interview with Letecia and Spencer gets played in the courtroom. They enter it into evidence. Okay. He believes at this point, after doing the interview, that Letecia, when asked, was of sound mind. The defense did jump up in a jet, but the judge says that he can give an opinion on this because he thought of her because it's just what he thought of her mental state at the time. And he was clearly in an interaction with her. He's not giving an expert opinion. He's not being asked for an expert opinion. He's just being asked, when you talk to this person, did you have any reason to believe she was not in her right mind? Okay. They replay a portion of the video the interview where Letecia switches from talking about Gannon in the present tense to the past. Prosecution then asked the witness if he felt the switch was important. Again, defense objects, and this time it's sustained. After the interview, Letecia got back into her driver's seat of the car and then drove away. Well, basically, the cross-examination of this witness was basically just Letecia said she didn't want her face on camera because she had concerns for her safety. He asked her straight out, why didn't she want to be on camera? And he said that the reason she gave was that she had concerns for her safety. The jury did have a question. They wanted to know, did the defendant immediately stop crying after the interview? And the, the Wilson actually says yes, quicker than any normal person. Quicker than a normal person. She did. She did stop crying right away. And then they asked again, did her demeanor change following the interview? And he said, yes, it did. It did. She had a different demeanor during the interview than she did. Defense then follows up and says that the camera didn't stop immediately after the interview, but the microphone was removed and he left the scene. He said her demeanor change would have been outside of the view of the camera because defense was saying, well, why is that not showing on the camera? And he says, well, that didn't get recorded because everything, was shutting down. But when she walked away, it was totally had a different demeanor. So he's saying what he saw, not what was recorded on the video. All right. And that was it for Monday. Okay. On Tuesday, we had quite a few witnesses. We started the morning with Letecia's brother. Okay. He was very nervous. He was one of the biggest moments of the day was when he took the stand. He was crying and he was nervous, and he just said, "Why, Tisha?" Now that got reported everywhere. They took a break to get him calm. Um, he said he just wants to get it over with. The judge explained to the jury he has to be there and he'll be questioned by the prosecution and his sister's attorney. Um, Prosecution asked him if he can keep his cool, and he says he'll try his best. He was quite emotional. Um, they also told him that if he needs a break, that he could take it. So at that point, then they bring in the jury back in. Um, he testifies that there are two other sisters. Their mom is Deborah. He has multiple nieces, including Harley. He points out the defendant as his sister, Letecia Stauch. Okay, he hasn't seen her since January of 2020. In January, his Aunt Brenda, which is, and his mom and he all flew to Colorado to help support Letecia because they felt she was being wrongly accused of something and they thought that she would never do it. And they wanted to help look for Gannon. He knew his mom was going, so he wanted to go and support her. They flew to Denver on the 30th, and Brenda Ackert, his aunt, rented a car, a Nissan Altima. Brenda drove the car from the airport to Colorado Springs, and they went to a shopping center with a Marshall store in it where Letecia and Harley were. Letecia told them that the cops had threw her and Harley down and detained them. So they got a hotel at the extended suites because they had taken the phone and the car and everything. So he testifies that they got some suites. In Dakota's room there was his mom and his aunt Brenda. He can't remember if he got one room or two rooms on testimony. But he does recall that the next morning, Brenda rented a van to help Letecia and Harley move their things. Letecia tried to get her pocketbook back from the authorities. This is when she went to the police station, and they said that they couldn't give it back. Once they got to the house, they're going to help her move. Okay, they started loading up everything Harley and Letecia brought out. Officers were there, and they checked everything that was being brought out. Dakota was aggravated at the time because he felt that the family were being looked at as criminals, and he was quite defensive at the time with them checking everything, putting in. He figured that, Dakota figured that she was heading back to South Carolina, meaning Letecia. He recalls the interview with the news reporter, but he's not sure how it came about. Dakota said he was driving the van with all of their belongings in it. Letecia had told her family that she would ask Al when the next search was so they could join. They didn't feel they were being treated right, but they did want to help. Because they were asking, like, when were you in the searches and stuff like that. And so she said she had to ask Al first. At some point, though, Letecia said she was going to get some dog food, and she left in her Nissan Altima. She was gone for a while, Dakota says, longer than what he expected, but he doesn't remember why. She was gone for a long time, but he thought maybe she just needed some time to herself. No one tried to call her at the time or see where she was that he remembers or recalls. Oh, she did arrive back at the hotel. She seemed normal. He can't remember if she had dog food with her or not. He testified that on February 1st, Dakota helped her rent a new van from Budget Rental, and they unloaded everything from the first van into the second van. He saw her with a lot of suitcases when he was asked. One was very heavy. He offered to help her, and she said she didn't need any help. He asked what was in the suitcase, and she said softball stuff. He didn't feel right about the suitcase. It was really heavy. It was too heavy for her. So E48 is the evidence, is a suitcase. It's the green suitcase that he saw Letecia putting into the van and she wouldn't let him help with. After everything was loaded into the van, they were ready to go home. And Dakota drove Brenda's van to wherever they had to return it, but he doesn't remember where. And Letecia drove off in the budget van. Letecia had said something at that time about going back to Myrtle Beach, and she and Harley left. Letecia is 14 years older than Dakota. Oh, and this is coming out during the interview. He would only see her on holidays, you know. He went to Myrtle Beach to stay with them and visit. Um, his dad was James, Letecia's stepfather, and he passed on Dakota's birthday in 2004. Okay. He isn't sure about the relationship between his dad and his sister, but if there was anything unusual, he thinks he would have heard about it because his mom would have said something. Brenda was a great mom to him. I don't think none of us should have a problem with my mom. When he was with Letecia, he saw her interact with others, make decisions, go through everyday life. He does not know her to have any serious mental illness. He had never heard these accusations before of abuse. They just said she was OCD, and they said that that was an obsessive cleaning disorder because she had to keep stuff clean all the time. And she liked to keep cleaning everything, and everything had its spot. So he does say that they often teased her and talked about her having the OCD. Okay. Hmm. He was asked, when you were around her, did she keep things clean? He said, yeah, that she did it all the time. He doesn't remember Letecia using other names at all when asked if about, you know, other names and different personalities. Prosecution asked if she ever called herself Harmony or Jasmine, and he says no. Dakota thinks Letecia liked Disney movies. Dakota has never heard her speak in a Spanish accent or call herself by any other name. He has not seen her in any stressful situations except for in Colorado. She did not speak in an accent in Colorado, okay, at all. The state asked if she was ever called herself Maria, and he said not to his recollection. Dakota says that he believes that Letecia has the capacity to know right from wrong and that she's very smart. She's a good athlete. She plays softball, baseball, basketball. He said she's more a leader than a follower. She can drive a vehicle. She was all the time when he was there. She stopped at red lights, and she went when it was green. He witnessed her obey the law throughout his entire life, even in Colorado, like she knows right from wrong. He said she acted funny the whole time they were in Colorado, though, that she did seem stressed about everything that was going on and looking over her shoulder. He said that the cops detaining her may have made her a bit paranoid about cops following her. And when he had heard that Letecia pled guilty by reason of insanity, Dakota believed it was the only way Letecia did it at the time. That was the only time he believed that she did it because she said so. Until then, he did not think she was capable of this. The defense suggested that perhaps Letecia suggested that, the only way that could be do something horrible was if Letecia had this mental break. As soon as his body was found, Dakota says he knew she did it. He thought she might have snapped and went crazy, but now, no, he does not believe so. He said he did have that thought when the body was first found, but not anymore. All right. He says that they're outcasts in their own town, and he feels that everyone is looking and judging at them and his mom. The defense asked if it says it's his stepsister's fault, and Dakota says no, she isn't his stepsister, she is his half sister, and he corrects them. He said he is angry at her for the embarrassment that she has caused the whole family. In Colorado, she was acting different than normal, and he reiterates that with the defense, that she was pacing and paranoid. Letecia was paranoid and thought the black BMW was following her. Okay. Defense asked when Letecia left home, and that was at 16. She moved out of the house. Dakota was only 2 years old at the time, so he has no active memories of Letecia with his father. He does admit that his father had a drinking problem, and he would be physical with his mother. Sometimes his mom had to take them to a hotel to get away from him. Sometimes when his mom was at work, he would watch the children. His father once gave Dakota so much alcohol as a child that he passed out. And she also said that his mother would sometimes leave him with knives so he could protect himself against his father. So they did acknowledge on cross-examination a problem with the dad, but no recollection of any problem with Letecia and the dad. Okay. At this point, the prosecution is going to redirect Dakota Lowry in saying that, the father, James, was in the Air Force, and he says that he did serve in the war. It was a different time when he got back, but he can't speak to, much about it because they separated when he was only 3 years old. Most of his recollections is what his mom is telling him. His mom was protective of the children, and she doesn't play about with her kids. She protected them, and she protected herself. Dakota said he thought Letecia may had a mental break at first, but now he feels like too much was done for that to be true. There was too much of her actually actively doing things for there actually have been a mental break. When she told him there was a softball equipment in the suitcase, he said it showed that she knew right from wrong and intentionally hid Gannon's body from him. So he was not trying to get any help. She actively didn't want anybody to know what was in that suitcase. She wanted them moved from their van to another van, and she moved that suitcase herself and would accept no help when it was offered. This is why he says he does not believe she had a mental break. The jury had a question for Dakota. Do you remember where the green suitcase was retrieved from? He said no. The first time he saw it was when they were moving things from one van to another. He doesn't remember seeing it come out of the house when they were moving things from the house. So it was in the van, and he just remembers her moving it from one van to the other herself. The next witness is Josh Johnson. In February of 2020, he worked for Budget Truck Rental, and this witness is just going to confirm all of the rental agreements that went through with the two vans. He points out the name on the last one. It says Letecia Stauch. He verified her identity with her driver's license and all, and he had the last four numbers of the driver's license, and the state that it was in was South Carolina, and that rental agreement was from February 1st. Okay. He said that he did speak with Letecia, would probably not really recognize her due to the number of trucks and all that he actually rented. But he did say that that's what, he just submitted the forms. Okay. He didn't have any concerns at the time that they were filling out the forms. He didn't notice anything. He would notice if somebody felt like there was too many questions being asked or a form or they didn't understand it. He has had customers before that he felt uncomfortable to rent to, and or who smelled like alcohol or were acting confused. He said that if he had any concerns during the rental process, he would have stopped the process at all. She seemed of sound mind when she rented the vehicle. He had no concerns that Letecia did not understand the terms of the rental agreement. He says although he can't remember the exact conversation that happened, he would know because of the amount that he does if something was off. The jury had a question for him. When was the budget rental van reservation made? He said it's unknown. It only shows the day they picked it up. They did not have the actual reservation date on file. And then they asked, when was the van to be turned in on February 5th? Or where was it to be returned in on February 5th? And he said in Grapevine, Texas, was what was marked on the form. Follow-up question from prosecution. When someone reserves a van, they get to choose the location. It's not random. So Letecia had to choose Grapevine, Texas. It was asked and it was reported that as long as it's within 50 miles of the original location, you can drop it off with no fees or additional charges if they return it to a different location, as long as it's within 50 miles. Okay. And then Josh Johnson does not know where the van was ultimately dropped off because he does not have that particular drop-off van log with him. They then went on to Sergeant Roy Ditzler, and he was with the Colorado Springs Police Department, and he's been there for 21 years. His current duties are Drug Enforcement Administration Task Force, which investigates large-scale drug opportunities. In January 2020, he was assigned to the Colorado Springs Police Department Metro Vice Intelligence Unit, and he was the supervisor of intelligence. He was responsible for coordinating and allocating resources for undercover operations. Okay. It was a Lieutenant Koch who asked Ditzler to contact the El Paso Sheriff's Office. They needed resources for surveillance, and he actually assigned GPS trackers to vehicles as part of this, and they put them on the undercarriage of the vehicles. He actually was there in support, and the subject is not supposed. He reiterated that the subjects do not know they are placing GPS devices on the vehicle. One of the reasons to use a GPS is to minimize exposure or chance during undercover operations that the subject may find out that you're actually surveilling them. Okay, so he went through all the process of that. Okay. They actually were keeping a visual on them through undercover. They actually talks about they've been identified through photographs that he spotted them, that he did. They went through the whole process and they did get the GPSs installed. Okay. He said they saw them at an extended stay America hotel with the vehicle parked in the parking lot. He received the word that the GPS was then signed, so they went, and that's when they were able to actually get the GPSs on there. Okay. They then go on to Lieutenant Jake Abishon. He's in the deputy sheriff for 21 years. Currently a lieutenant for the patrol division. He does a lot of administration work overseeing general operations of the day shift and patrols. In 2020, he was a detective sergeant in investigations. Okay. He was actually responsible for the monitoring and all the placement of the GPS through that department. The GPS was used to try to identify whether a person or vehicle is in a particular place at a particular time. He documents how they're keeping the records and what they do. Okay, once the device has been placed and activated, the ability to log into the system and see where the tracker was given at any time, it generates points and addresses. Okay, it is not monitored 24/7, but it keeps historical record that they can look back at. Okay. Officers can print out a report. It lists everything the vehicle has gone through with any specific period of time. So at this point, they have the printed reports from January 31st through February 1st, and they enter those in as an exhibit. The tracking devices had nicknames depending on which detectives used it the most. The tracker that was placed on the Nissan Altima was nicknamed Jake. Okay, so they found the Nissan was at the hotel, and on January 30th, the vehicle began to move faster than 5 miles an hour. It was going 52 miles an hour. It went through South Perry Park, a location of interest in the investigation. Searchers were going through that area at the time. All through those area, the area just north of Palmer on Highway 105, South Perry Park. Okay, they were not monitoring any of this live. All of the GPS documentation of them going through the search area was actually what they found historically. They did find that at 4:06 p.m. on the 28th is when the Denver went to rental car area of Denver International Airport, and one of the detectives got information that the car had been returned, so someone was sent to retrieve the GPS on the vehicle. All right, so then they go on to Detective Brian Rogers, who also works for the Colorado Springs Police Department. But he's a digital forensics detective. He extracts and examines data from digital devices like phones, computers, surveillance devices, and all. He has a bachelor's in software engineer. Okay. He process depends on, what process he uses depends on the type of device. He's talking about how they generally go through and get the different devices to communicate, how they try to figure out the security on it, and if he knows the password or anything like that. Last year, he did over 700 cell phone extractions, over 100 computer extractions in 20 surveillance systems, and a few vehicles. Okay. Um, he gets qualified as a digital forensics for the court. He enters in Exhibit 716. It's a vanilla envelope containing an extraction of a device download on January 30th. The El Paso County Sheriff's Office Deputy Ciros asked him to extract information from one cell phone related to Gannon Stauch's disappearance. That phone was the Apple iPhone 8 Plus. He did not review the data he extracted. He just extracted it. It wasn't a locked iPhone. He circumvented the security and extracted the information, copied the data to the hard drive, and then gave it to the detective. The email associated the phone was harleyhunt@yahoo.com. We then go on to Detective Robert Ciros, who is the one who received the extracted data. He has been he recently moved to Florida. He lived in Colorado Springs back in 2020, and he was a detective at the El Paso County Sheriff's Department at the time, in January 2020. Okay. On the morning of January 29th, he was assigned to look at for video of Leticia's rental car. He actually was assigned to assist in any way that he could. He went to the Avis rental counter and spoke with the manager there. They had their own camera at the counter, and the manager worked on getting that footage. The car that was rented was a Kia Rio with Texas plates. Around 8:50 a.m. or 9 on the 28th, Letecia is the one who rented the car. Some of the footage shows her as well in the rental car area. He was familiar with Leticia's description from being briefed on the assignment. The manager gave him Leticia's rental agreement. He had no idea that the car was returned or was going to be returned, so quickly. The Kia was parked in the short-term parking lot and not the rental car area. He pointed out that the defendant was the person that he saw on the surveillance video that rented the vehicle. So they're just tying in the Kia that she used to pick up Al at the airport. Okay. They enter in all of the photos from Avis Rental and the Kia Rio Inn. Okay. He's got a fair amount of Celebrix training. They go through again about the extraction of all of the data. He explains that the process of Celebrite, if anyone is super interested, they go really into great detail. If you want to go watch that one, he's going to tell you exactly how they do anything. He said it was very good explanation. Okay, but hey, when they give him a phone and it's got everything in it, he's got the go. It pulls it out and it's searchable, which is one thing that he said was the best part about it. Uh, they did a Celebrite extraction on Al Stauch's phone at that time. They then submit Exhibit 226, which is going to be the CD that contains the whole Celebrite report and the photographs of Al Stauch's cell phone. On cross-examination, it came out that he did take the DNA snobs from the trunk of the Kia, the steering wheel, the shifter, internal driver, all of that. He's not aware of whether those swabs were actually tested. He just says that it's part of his process that he did. There is a difference. He said that there is a difference for doing a Celebrite download if you have the phone's password versus not having it. It's a different procedure. In most cases, locked phones give less information than phones you know the PIN or password for. Okay. They then go to a John Wadden rather, who worked at Budget, and he's just going to confirm the truck rentals that were done. Um, uh, about the he gives an exhibit gets entered 292, and it's a printed report from Air IQ on a specific rental truck. Okay. And he says that they have GPS devices on all their vehicles, not to track every rental customer, but for tracking missing and abandoned vehicles or stolen vehicles. So they keep GPS on all their vehicles. Okay. They said that actual Lowe's truck stopped in Pueblo, Colorado on 12/10. At 4 p.m., it was in Texas on US 87. At 10 p.m., it was on Bellevue, Texas. It went then through Decatur. Um, February 3rd at 2:14, there is a ping, and it's still at a certain street address in Texas. Okay. At 10 a.m., the car is moving through Decatur, Texas. It ends up in Ruston, Louisiana by 4:10 in the afternoon. At 10 o'clock, it ends up in Alabama. Okay. They go all the way through. It gets through Ferry Pass, all of this. It gets to Churchill Way, Southwest Lake City, Florida at 6:10 on February 5th. 2020 at 12:10 a.m. It is parked at Lake Buena Vista, Florida. It is stopped and it's still there at 12:10 a.m. It does not move until February 6th. At February 6th at 12:10, the car is moving towards Georgia, towards Pooler, Georgia. So they're the vehicle that has the suitcase in it is being tracked basically to the drop-off site. Okay. The rental contract was from February 1st to February 6th, 6:10 p.m. Okay, and this is on the date afterwards. It goes down through Georgia. After it passed, it goes through Forest Brook, South Carolina. At 6:10, it stops. At 12:10 p.m., the car is then located in East Conway, South Carolina. It then goes forward through. It's the vehicle stops. It stays there until February 12th at 12:10. Then it goes to Old Town Road in Garden City, South Carolina. That is the budget truck location, so it must have been turned in at that time. The data points are all used by the GPS and to prevent loss prevention, and that they just keep them on file for movement. But it was very, very good that they had that, because now they know exactly when the vehicle went near the bridge. Okay. Then there was John Grossel. He's senior management at Research Triangle Institute in North Carolina. He's a retired detective from the Rhode Island State Police. In January 2020, he worked at Research Triangle Institute in North Carolina and analyzed a budget rental truck on March 26th. This was a Ford van which ended up in Rhode Island. They document the vehicle with photos, examine it for evidence such as touch DNA, blood, body fluids, as well as anything still contained within the vehicle. They entered all of that in as exhibits. Okay. The van had no windows in the cargo area. It was just. They did test everything for blue stall. They found a cutting on the rear mat of a floor because the area of the mat had a positive reaction to Blue Star. That was directly taken in for further testing. Okay. And they submitted all of that into evidence also. The cutting was sent to Colorado for further analysis. And with the Verizon card that they found and the rubber dog bone that were also found in the car, everything was sent in along with all the photos that they took. In cross-examination, he said he was not sure how the van got from South Carolina to Rhode Island or how many people had rented it in between then. He didn't have those records with him. He said it was not his job to see if the blood and who it belonged to. That was sent to Colorado, and they needed to testify on that. There was no jury questions. Okay, I'm going to just take a quick look for questions. Okay, let's see. All right. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for gifting a membership, Crazy Cats. That's lovely. And welcome to Murder Millions Ox. I'm sorry I'm good like I know. Hello, Beck. Hello, everyone. I know. Beck, I don't believe she was insane either. I don't think she is at all. And they keep trying to say, especially when you look at the evidence that says, like right now we're going through, and I'm going to actually the rest of this is all just documenting, how she rented these vehicles, how she was hiding the body, what she was doing to cover everything. I mean, all of this testimony is from that, and I'm going to jump to yesterday's testimony now. Basically the rest of the detectives and everybody is just sort of the budget rental guys, all of these, just getting these vehicles all in there. Okay. The other phone call is going to be from the 911 call. Okay. Kathy Beckel then testified. She did the 911 call. She was asked for her address. She says she was the last one to see him between 3:30 and 4, but he was supposed to be home at 6. And that they were she says there were some stuff last night and in the morning, her husband, but Gannon was never in trouble. He's a straight A student. This is all she's telling on the 911 call. She says her daughter went to the park, but he wasn't there, and they checked all the neighbors' houses. When she asked who was the last person to see him, remember on the call, Letecia says, I guess me. She states that he was supposed to be playing outside at that time, but it's been so many hours and it was so nice, but they didn't want him to use the technology. Well, he did not return. Al lets him walk around the neighborhood, she said, and talk to friends. So she doesn't know any of the parents. She didn't have any names of friends to give anyone. Okay. Okay. All right. The last one was Sergeant Rosaria Hubble. Okay. This is all from examination at the house, okay? And they're talking about he was the supervisor during the investigation of a missing person runaway. They then, you remember, they classified after the 911 and all call. After speaking with Letecia, they classified him as a runaway based on what she had said, okay? They started searching on the 27th, of course, after the call, okay? This officer actually responded on the 3rd of February to the home because in Gannon's room there was blood evidence on the walls and on an electrical site. It was very hard to see after further testing. They went to use Blue Star in Gannon's room. When Hubble arrived, it appeared the blood had been cleaned up. The carpet was pulled back because sometimes when you clean a carpet, you push things back into the carpet. Hubble felt it was stiff and accidentally touched it without gloves. There was saturation through the carpet pad, and onto the cement from a blood stain. This was directly underneath Gannon's bed. Okay, they used further forensics to identify that there was blood in the room. Okay. It was a video taken of all this examination of the room, and they actually admitted that into testimony, and they played it for the court. for the jurors. They showed the backyard, a padlock on a fence next to the garage, the floor planks in the garage set in a different spot they were during the initial searches. They had been moved. There was blue star reaction on the stairs, showing a potential shoe imprint. In the laundry area, the tile floor reacted to the blue star in droplet sizes. There was a small amount of blood on the door and door handle on between the garage and the laundry. The floor on where the tile meets the carpet also reacted to the blue star uh, chemical. The carpet in the living room reacted to blue star. There was no saturation under that carpet, though. The stairs to the basement reacted to blue star with more droplets. Cleaning provides a slow reaction, unlike blood. It showed heavy cleaning on the stairs, luminol reaction on the landing, no saturation on the other side of the carpet. The baseboards above around the landing reacted to the blue star. The carpet at the bottom of the stairs reacted to blue star, showing a lot of cleaning in that area. A reaction to blue star at the base of the table, about a quarter of a side, like a droplet. Okay. In the basement, there was a cutout portion of carpet. The padding tested positive for blue star. Um, blue star showed that there was a lot of cleaning near the furniture. The hallway outside of Gannon's bedroom reacted to blue star and showed a trail to the back corner of the storage area near the sump pump. Multiple areas of the storage room showed blue star reactions. There are dozens of stickers denoting blood spatter on the walls of Gannon's room in the corner where his bed was, and there's a large red stain in the corner directly underneath where his bed had been. The state clarifies it was February 25th, 2020. Okay. And they do not recall when Al actually moved out. The cross-examination clarifies that the searches with the blue star were conducted several days prior to that, and that the blue star trail ended at the sump pump. The storage room was empty when they used the blue star, and that blue star is testing for iron. It is the building blocks of blood, protein, and iron. Presumably, further testing was done on the swabs. CIS techs were actually the ones who collected them all. The jury had a question for this witness. Does blue star in any way compromise the subsequent analysis of collected blood samples? And he said, I'm sorry, that is a question you have to ask the crime lab people. A scientist would be able to better explain it. When they say something is positive for blood, they mean 100% it is blood. I don't know if it does not impact the sample if they test it with blue star. Was the trash bin outside the search for evidence? The night that Sergeant Smith was there, the trash can was looked at. Okay, the next testimony is going to be by the nurse, Amanda Van Nest, and this is going to be in regards to Letecia being sent to the hospital for a SANE exam. She claimed that she was assaulted. One of the stories was that Eduardo had assaulted her, that she had been held capture in her own house, and that somebody had taken Gannon. This is another story, but they did take her in there because she did say she was assaulted. Basically, this nurse is going to say that she did not feel that she was overly upset. She did not talk with police officers around. She only spoke mostly when they weren't. That the EMS had reported that to her. That was something that the transport people had said that they noticed also, that whenever there was an officer that she wouldn't speak, but that she was quite casual and spoke with them when alone. Basically, Letecia did not had an involuntary examination of her hands and her body to see if there was any wounds. There were a couple of wounds on her hands that were notified, nothing really largely serious. However, when it came to the essay exam, Letecia left. Okay. She did not want to give a long description of her attack. She said that I don't know any other way to explain it. He was waiting at our home. He grabbed me. It was all leading up to that. He grabbed me and pushed me down in my son's room. I was kind of fighting back because he was not much bigger than me. And then at one point, he started forcing himself on me, taking off my pants. He didn't take off my shirt. I was saying no. I remember like a little bit of my back starting to hurt and my head was hitting the floor on the concrete. And then I could tell I had to give in. So I just basically gave in. Okay. Part of the exam was to search for injuries, and photographs were taken, but none were known. But she did not commit with complete examination that needed to be done to confirm an attack. They did take all of the pictures. There were some abrasions on her hand, like a scrape. When they say abrasion, they mean like a little tiny scrape. She says it was not really. It was between the pinky and the ring finger. There was also one at the base of the index finger below the knuckle on the left hand. Okay. This nurse has seen mostly 600 patients as a forensic nurse examiner, and only a handful of them have ever left before the exam was complete. She's seen a handful of patients who are unable to sign informed consent. She did not have any concerns that Letecia was not able to give consent. She said she was informed, that she did understand, that she did give informed consent. Um, if she does say that if she had believed that she was mentally diseased in any way or defective, they can't give informed consent. And she's trained to actually look for that. And like they not actually to say whether somebody has a disorder, but whether they are not actually of the right mind to actually give informed consent. All right. She said that could be a danger to themselves or others. She would have notified emergency physicians or the mental health things, and she would have been held for a type of an examination. And that is often, that can happen during these examinations. And she's pretty well, it could have been, if she had felt anything was up, she would have reported it. She said that she believes that Letecia was sane on January 29th and able to give consent. And that was 2 days after her stepson went missing and she was purportedly sexually assaulted. On cross examination, they asked if she had training in forensic psychiatry, which she said, nope, I do not. I did not try any mental exam on Letecia nor try to diagnose her, but I am competent in accessing them for consent matters. I cannot diagnose mental health issues, but I can tell if someone is actually of mind to give consent and understands what is being said to me. There was a judge follow-up with the attorneys on this one. Letecia did not have the right to not consent to the suspect exam. In other words, for all of the photographs they took of her body and her hands and all of the injuries on the outside. It was clear she left before the voluntary portion of the exam. She had to stay for certain parts of the exam because it was ordered to see if there was any injuries on her arms, on her hands, anywhere else. However, the essay is a voluntary part of the examination, and she left before that portion. The defense wants to make a record regarding to lay people giving an opinion on mentally diseased or defective. They're very upset that the nurse is saying that she could tell mental competency for consent, and they wanted to make a note that the nurse was not a psychiatrist and was not assessing mental health for defectiveness. Okay. That was it for that day. And that was a lot. Let me just check on questions really quick. Okay. I do agree. Okay. Tony says, even if she's insane, it doesn't change anything. She has to be locked up for the rest of her life. You know what? Absolutely. What really screwed up is how many times she stabbed him. Yes, it really is. The violence in the way. Absolutely. I agree. She really wanted to cause the most amount of damage as possible. Yes. But the part that proves the sanity, is everything she did afterwards. Would you guys not agree? I mean, when you're mm, when you're actually getting another van and moving the suitcase yourself and you actually disposed of the body in an area that would not be found, um you actually had the wherewithal to put the body in the suitcase with everything else, and the amount of cleaning that was done throughout the house really did clean up everywhere. The way she kept Lana out of the house, the way she involved Harley in like all of this, her family, the interviews that she gave, which is part of the testimony for the next day, um that those when you go to the actually, there's going to have the the recordings of it, you really need to hear the interview that she did with them. She's really all over the place. She really is. I mean, at this point, she has told how many different stories to the police and to Al back and forth. She's showing up late for interviews. She's avoiding them. She is trying not to be to discuss it with any police officer, any detective. She doesn't want to give any info. She's not actively part of any of the searches. She's on Facebook giving information here or there, but we did hear from the one witness from Mobley who was on the Facebook group that she was like giving all kinds of crazy information back and forth, but not actively looking for Gannon and not willing to answer questions about searching for Gannon. You know, yeah, I know, right, Anna? No way is she insane. Yeah. Okay. So, mm, all right. The head detective for the investigation in El Paso County Sheriff's Office, you hear Detective Jess Bethel's name mentioned a lot through the testimony about Detective Bethel leading it and organizing and going through all that. So the first one was, you know, is going to be the first witness. Okay, it's going to be about from Detective Jess Bethel. But prior to that, okay, before the jury was brought in, the question back and forth came up again from the day before. Remember, the nurse had said um, that she believed that she was competent, okay, and the defense was having a big thing about that, okay, but the judge is starting with some case review regarding objectives about the layperson's opinions on a person's mental condition because the defense has objected to the fact that she was allowed to make that statement. Now, she gives informed consent all the time. She has medical paperwork that has to be sent for exams and things like that. Well, they were very upset because she was a nurse and because of this that was stated. So there's case law being cited here back and forth. The judge threw a whole bunch of stuff that there. Not going to go through all those individual ones, but it was quite interesting for me. He now sees it depends on which circumstances the witness had contact with the defendant. And in this case, except for Dakota and Al, had contact either at or near the time of the offense, which is alleged to have been committed in this case, a person can give testimony regarding whether or not, based on their contact with them, they thought the defendant was sane. They cannot give testimony regarding a diagnosis that may have rendered the defendant insane unless qualified as an expert or foundation is laid. Questions such as asking about whether she was used different names are fine. Van Ness, the nurse, was unique because part of her job is obtaining consent from a patient, and this requires ensuring the patient has the present capacity to understand and make decisions. Her testimony was properly admitted, and they will not strike it because the defense wanted everything removed from her testimony because of it. All right. The jury will be instructed on what insanity is. This all goes to the weight of testimony. So there it's all in. It's not going to be removed. Okay. Nice try, defense, but not going to happen. Okay, so now we have Detective Jess Bethel, who currently is a stay at home mom, but in January of 2020, she was working for El Paso Sheriff's Office. And her specific job was major investigations team. She did all of the investigations into the major homicides, robberies, and assaults. She's been involved at that time for more than 100 homicide investigations. In Gannon's particular investigation, she was the lead detective. A lead detective, she explained, coordinates the investigation, gets all the leads, the information being collected by other detectives. She analyzes the info and disseminates any further leads, gets people involved. She eventually arrests the person or looks at potentially a different suspect. Okay. She claims that this was not a typical homicide investigation. It was initially received a lot of social media attention, and the case quickly grew to a multi-agency case. Close to 10, if not more, including Colorado State and federal and other state agencies from South Carolina and Florida. The scope of the investigation changed the role of the lead detective so because so much information was coming in. She had so assumed more of an investigative role as opposed to sitting back and collecting all the leads. It was an everyone on deck, and this is not the first detective who said that. In El Paso, Colorado, in El Paso Sheriff's Department, they actually had everybody they could involved in this investigation. Okay. In Gannon's investigation, she admits that they did not have a standard homicide scene where you would be evidence of a homicide in a body. The suspect provided alternate leads and multiple stories. This all influenced how everything was proceeded. Okay, they had to chase down all the leads, they had to chase down all of the parts of all of her stories. It was just as important to prove someone did something as to prove that they didn't do something. The need to act without bias and take info, she said, is the most credible part. And to vet everyone is before determining if it's a good lead or not. Okay. She became actually involved in the investigation on the 28th. She says that the age of Gannon, the weather, and his medical conditions made it very important for him to be found sooner rather than later, especially if he had been a runaway. Okay. They searched fields, reservoirs all over. They found no clues of anything anywhere in the immediate or surrounding the areas surrounding the home. They reached out to Letecia to see if she had any information about behavior changes in Gannon or any clues, whether he had left anything behind. She was hesitant at best to talk to them. She wrote apprehensive in her report, and she's looking at her notes as she's giving her testimony. She remembers that Letecia was not quite forthcoming. She did not allow Bethel to come to the house. This was on the phone. She said there were several young children in the home and she didn't want them to overhear their conversation. So Bethel had offered her, ask her a place of her choice, and they chose Starbucks on Mount Fountain Mesa, and that is where Al and Letecia and Bethel met with multiple other officers for the interview at the Starbucks. They enter a disc containing the interview with Al and Letecia in the Starbucks. That was 55 minutes long. Okay. But basically, they ask about Gannon, and they give information. Al is speaking. You can't hear him until, um, they talk about where he went to school, his normal routine. Al is the one giving a lot. Letecia says a lot of times she doesn't have the names of the parents or the families. Al gives the names of Lana's friends and the brother in the neighborhood. He gives more of the friends' numbers. He says of all the schools. He's giving all the information basically. Um, she said that Gannon had stayed home because he was sad. He went and got about having an accident or something. I don't know. It gets kind of confusing here. Letecia was interrupting Al occasionally, only to make it like things were bigger than they were. Um, they confirmed that Gannon had no social media. Um, he wasn't allowed to go online. Um, They said Bethel then talks to them about that they can do a download of the phone and potentially find all the deleted items Gannon may have hidden. And Al actually says, absolutely, let's give him the phone. His Nintendo Switch is missing. Al says he brought something because it connects to the internet. A bit confusing because, on the phone, it doesn't actually say what it was. Okay. They also confirmed that Gannon takes ADHD medication. It's never really caused him a problem. He's been a straight A student. Um, he gives them Lana and Landon's information. He didn't remember his Gannon's mother's date of birth, but Letecia did, and she gave it forward. Bethel says she mentioned multiple children in the home. Letecia says she mostly meant Lana, and Lana gets worked up very easily and is having like a hard time with anything, which is why she didn't want anybody at the house. The search history on the phone for Gannon said on Monday afternoon, sometime he had searched, "Can my parents find my cell phone if it's off?" Al says he doesn't know if he meant to take the phone with him. Okay. Um, they're talking about things that they find, YouTube kids programs that are on there. Um, he's not talking to girls or anything. Al joked with him about it. Letecia says he was grossed out by his puberty class. They ask about 10315 Declaration Drive. They don't know what that is. And Al says it doesn't make any sense because he went the other direction. All right. Detective Bethel explained they were providing consent and they would have to get a search warrant if he didn't. But they do turn over Garen's phone because Al is there and he gives it to him. He also says that there are no relatives in the area that Gannon could be staying with. They go over it again, that he had stomach problems, about the dropped candle, the bath salts, all of that. And then Al went to the airport Saturday night. His flight was Sunday morning. He had one day of class on Monday, and this all happened on Monday night. All of this is from the thing, or from the interview. Al turned over all of the usernames, the passwords to iCloud. He says Gannon would never, you know, the, he doesn't understand some of the things that are on there, but Letecia said that she didn't ever look initially. She was doing other things, but she had sent Harley to search around and they had found like cigars and lighters and stuff, and perhaps like Gannon had been smoking. Al contested that no, he doesn't think that he ever would get into that because his mom and stepdad and grandma, and he knows it leads to bad things. Letecia said, what about, in his book bag? And, so then they start looking through things like that. But Letecia was countering some of the things that Al was saying. Letecia said something to the forms of when Gannon's not on his medication, he's fine. When Gannon's on his medication, he's fine. If he's not on his medication, you need to kick him out. Like he's too active. He needs to be outside doing stuff. When he's on his medication, he's like a zombie at first. Bethel questioned them more about any health concerns that Gannon may have had. You know, and there's some questions about whether he had been bleeding or not. Um, anyway, Bethel finishes off with the interview. It's about 5:45 p.m. on January 28th when she called Letecia to request a toothbrush and/or hairbrush from Gannon to develop a DNA profile. A common thing that we do in this. So Al Stauch had showed up at the sheriff's office. Bethel was texting Letecia, trying to get her to come in. But Al was the one who brought everything in for them. Letecia would not come in. At around 6 o'clock, Letecia called Bethel's cell phone. Due to bad reception, Bethel called her back, but that call was not actually recorded, so it's not entered in. But she does recall that they discussed her relationship with Gannon and Lana, said her parenting they had different parenting styles, her and Al, that they never formally adopted each other's children. She wasn't allowed to make parenting decisions for Gannon or Lana. Al would make them, could not make them for Harley, that they kept their actual who was in charge of the decisions based on whose child it was. Letecia said that she was basing the time that Gannon left on a TV show that she liked to watch, so she couldn't name the show. She said Gannon was wearing a blue shirt and blue pants. She was able to identify his tennis shoes and the blue hoodie. She declined to come down to the station because her stomach was bothering her. At 7 o'clock, then Letecia FaceTimed Bethel that she was mad because her daughter was left alone with a bunch of men in the home. She meant the sheriff's office, who were picking up Lana at Al's request for an interview. After this, she got a call from Al. He was upset, crying. He didn't tell them everything. He had previously done an interview with Bethel's partner and explained that Letecia had rented a vehicle from the airport when she picked him up and that he had not disclosed that. He then mentioned trying to find the Tiguan and he was upset he couldn't find it. He was very upset that he thought that things were going wrong and he wanted to give Detective Bethel all the information that he could. He was upset that he hadn't mentioned other things. Okay. He came back in for another interview. Letecia refused. Letecia texted Detective Bethel multiple times overnight, uh, after the 28th, asking what did they want from her. They're saying that she was being set up by a fellow blue officer, that she was upset about her daughter being in the home with men from the sheriff's office, that she can hear what is being discussed inside the home due to cameras inside the home. And Bethel asked if she had any information to find Gannon, and she would not come forward with any. And she asked her to come in again over and over again, but she kept declining. Um, at almost midnight that night, a FaceTime between Letecia and Bethel was actually recorded. Um, Letecia said, I got your message. You didn't say anything else. I'm confused as to what you want me to do. What's going on? You talked to me. Now you want to talk to me again. She said, you sent me that message saying you don't know what you want from me. Yes, because my child couldn't leave. I couldn't go home. I don't have anywhere to sleep. And I just don't understand why you need to talk to me again. This goes on and on. She says, I don't know what's going on in your home, but we just needed to, get the opportunity to you to come to the office and sit down and talk with us, and she still will not. She said she will not go to the office. She can't go to get food. She can't go to get coffee. She's been asked why she needs to go to get anything. Everybody asks her everything, but except for nobody is letting her do what she needs to do. She asks her again if there's anything more that she might be able to share in regards to finding Gannon. And Letecia says she's so sick of this that she starts crying and moaning. Um, and Bethel is trying to ask her where she is because at this point, remember, Letecia is not at the house and she won't disclose to anyone where she is, not even Al. She says that people are looking for her. Um, it was very, if you listen to it, she sounds very, very paranoid. Very, very paranoid. Detective Bethel then just says that Letecia kept texting her throughout the night. A lot of the most messages were always focused just around Letecia. She kept asking for information about Gannon. She would not really disclose anything. It was odd that she was so focused about herself and not Gannon. With other missing children, the parents are always willing to give anything and constantly talking about the child and trying to give as much information. She said she found this very disconcerting and very odd behavior. Um, she said Letecia said that Gannon had blood on him from cuts, and she described burns, the deflecting the cause of the injuries away from herself. She said she didn't hurt Gannon. She said it repeatedly. Most times, if you don't know what happened to somebody, you wouldn't put yourself out there to say you didn't do something to that person. She was describing all kinds of things and saying that I didn't do that and I didn't do that. Okay. Letecia didn't show up for the interview at 10 a.m. that she agreed to. During the course of this night, back and forth. I'm starting to kind of feel for this detective, because she's got all this interaction with her, and it's very not productive. Letecia is just whining and carrying on that it's all about her, not giving her information. They're trying to find Gannon still. He's listed as a missed child, a child at risk, okay, possibly a runaway. It's cold. And this woman is texting her all on night about how upset she is that they want to talk to her. Okay. She never did show up for a 10 a.m. agreed meeting that she said she would. The next morning, Bethel then texted her and, well, Letecia responded that she had put measures in place because her daughter was being stalked and her family was receiving death threats, and she's not going to be able to come in until she gets all of this straightened out. She did arrive sometime late afternoon, after lunch. Okay, and so they submitted this copy of evidence in here. Okay, um, they did search her when she showed up for her interview. They're gonna submit that whole thing in there. The interview goes on and on, all the stories that she told in between back and forth, but basically, talks about a job that she's getting with Spirit Airlines, going back and forth. She talks about Lana being a sleeper. She talks about smoke coming from the basement. She backed upstairs, grabbed Lana, the candle, you know, the thing, the whole candle story again. Okay. And she said that the fire was coming from the floor towards the sofa, that she was getting everybody out, that she got the blankets and she smashed everything down. She got Gannon, woke up and realized what was happening, that the covers were on fire. They all get outside, they all get in out of Bert's truck and they leave. She said she drove off in a panic. Um, she did put the fire out, but they left, all in a panic. She said she drove maybe around the block or two, and then she possibly came back right back. And then she started talking about fixing the carpet and etc. She said that Lana didn't want to sleep in her room. Everyone was still kind of frazzled. Um, She said that Al freaks out about everything, so she was going to fix everything, and no, they weren't going to mention anything to him. She said that she sent him messages, but that he was in a different time zone, so he never got back. That Gannon had black marks all on his shirt, like smoke marks, and he had long sleeve shirt and a short sleeve shirt on. And she didn't see him in any kind of nothing other than the little burns, any other injury on him, but these little burns. Okay. And so the detective asks her clearly, "Where did you see burns on Gannon?" And she grabbed the collar of her shirt and says, "Right here, there was a burn. And the reason for that was I think he was trying to come up, kind of burned him a little. He was trying to come up at it and it kind of burned him a little bit." She didn't know any other difference or anything like that. And he ran out of the house and everything was normal, yada, yada, yada. But I don't know. This story just goes on and on with her. Again, like the fourth different version. They play the whole thing for the court, and that is actually going to be available. Okay. I'm going to skip down. The interview goes on for well over an hour. Okay. Um she starts to ask specific questions of Letecia, and Letecia starts hesitating to answer because she's realizing the questions aren't confirming the things she said before. She starts to ramble so much that she's even when asked direct questions, that she says, detective asked, "What was the first thing you saw when you walked inside?" And she said, um, she's just rambling, and she says, "Do I have to talk about it? I don't want to be dreaming of this anymore. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I keep trying to block everything out of my mind and I don't want to even go through it." She starts talking about motion sensors in the house, that she wanted to work out, she wanted to listen to music and relax. She said she wishes she could give them more information, but she doesn't remember, and she doesn't really want to talk about that. She said she kept saying things like, "Remember I told you earlier. Just go back and look at what I told you earlier." Okay. She goes on to the story about getting the guns and everything that she told the other officers before. And she talks about the man who was in the house with her and possibly attacking Gannon. This was all quite distressing when Al heard all of this. This is another story that she told Al too. Um, she starts talking about like disorders that she She said that she heard Gannon yelling help, and she doesn't remember anything else. That the second time in the battle, this guy was battling her, and he was just a blur because she was so disappointed in her emotional self-worth, and how could she feel that she couldn't help to fight and that everything was going wrong. So the detective switches it off. So she doesn't want to remember anything. They start talking about smells. Could she smell paint or drywall order or anything like that, you know? Um, and she said she remembered smelling alcohol, not a deep, strong alcohol smell, but a sense of alcohol, like like breath. To smell like when you walk into a restaurant, like the smell of fresh tomatoes. Okay, whatever that was supposed to mean. Okay, she doesn't remember ever being hit in the head during this altercation with the gentleman or anything like that. She doesn't remember losing consciousness. She does remember that the nerves in her spine had been injured, and so she was having trouble with all of that. Um, she says she got like Lana. All of this happened with Lana and Harley in the house, but they didn't know any of this, okay, because they were locked in the bedroom. All of this stuff that's going on with this intruder in the house that has Gannon and Letecia, but Lana and Harley are in the bedroom, but they don't know. And then she tells them to go outside, and they're out. She doesn't know how the man in the house got a hold of the suitcase, but she's pretty sure um what he did with it. But she said that he demanded that she go and get it or get something, and that he was attacking her at the time. Um During this time, she says that Harley calls or texts her, and Letecia texted her back. Okay. She said she gave him, along with the suitcase, a brown box that was empty. An empty brown box, a cardboard shipping box. She said he would, at this point, and he's attacking her, and she's talking in detail about the difficulty he had taking her pants off and etc. She goes into great detail about the things that happened to her, but not any of the things that happened with anyone else in the house. Um, She said that she sent Harley and Lana to the Dollar Tree, that they have an ATT alarm. And, the detective says at this point, from all this rambling back and forth, she wants to take a break. Letecia says she hasn't showered or eaten. The detective mentions, collecting evidence from her body. Would uh, Letecia then says, I would do anything for you to figure out who Eduardo is and make sure that I can just like she says she was wearing a set of clothing she had already washed, and she doesn't remember, but it was athletic pants. Okay. She has no of the items that she had during the attack. She wouldn't give them the alarm code, only the garage code. She said you don't need the alarm code to get in. Letecia then wanted to leave, and she was hungry. When her it would be better if she got tested before she got showered. They're trying to get her to get the sane exam, and she does agree to go to the hospital to have it. Um, at this point, Detective Bethel comes in and says that Leticia's going to be detained for a while. She's going to be escorted, and she's going to be detained for giving false information. Mm. For false reporting until they get a search warrant. She is put back in the room, and she says she would have given them the phone, but they snatched it, which was disrespectful, and she doesn't like to be shot in a room. Letitia's very upset that she can't use the restroom alone. She doesn't want anybody watching her, but at this point, they do not want to let her by herself. At that point, the testimony ends with she's saying she's not like she says he's not stupid, he's very educated as far as the person who attacked her. Okay. She tries to get them to restart the interview all over again. Well, she asked if she needed an attorney in the hallway. So at that point, we're going to continue again on Friday, because at that point they ended for the day. We're going to continue with testimony from Detective Bethel, who was the lead investigator. It was a very long interview that she did, and that I'm going to actually get you the clip for that. Uh, if you can watch, Recovery Addict does a really good job of not talking during the actual testimony and stuff like that. So you could watch their Law and Crime also put it out. They had a little bit of interruption, but their audio was pretty good. I will tell you that a lot of the audio has a lot of clicking, like depending on where the microphones are or where they're recording from, the court clerk is right there. So when they're playing actual the audios of the 911 calls, the phone calls, this interview video, you can hear the rustling of paper and the clicking and things like that. But it's really not too much. It's just like as if you were there. You would hear all of the same if you were in the class. If you were in the courtroom, you would hear it the same. Um, well, um, Okay, I'm gonna look through for questions. Wow, that was 2 hours, but we got through 2.5 days. I want to see. Definitely looks like she's trying to avoid the admission of guilt there. I do think so too. Yes, the reason she doesn't want to be caught in the lies, that's why she's hedging a lot, I think. No narcissist, no narcissist wants to be exposed, that they'll do anything to avoid it. Exactly. All sounds like an avoidance of responsibility. Yep, which she must have used before in situations where she had messed up. It does sound like she's quite manipulative. I agree, Liam. I absolutely do. And welcome. Yeah, welcome everyone. Oh, well, that was a long 2 hours. You guys have mm, anything else you want to ask in regards to that testimony? Well, I do have some links. I will tell you that there is one Reddit that is very, very good in regards to the testimonies that are given for each day on the trial. And there's one particular person who's posting in there like a whole review. It is the Gannon Stauch Reddit on here, and she actually goes through who everybody is and what the testimony's about. If you like additional reading on it, there's there. But I also would recommend Recovery Addicts actual everyday they're reporting. There was no court today, so don't look for anything for this Thursday, the 13th. But from the witnesses that we spoke about from Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week, there would be separate videos. And because of the way the feed is done, there's often 2 videos a day because when they break for lunch, they cut the feed and then they come back after lunch for the feed. And again, the feed is the judge, and then you can see the podium, and then you'll see Letecia off in the corner. Some of the feeds are showing the witnesses, and sometimes they are showing actually the pictures and all behind them on the wall that they're putting up, the evidence photos and things like that that they're putting up. But remember, they're only putting out audio afterwards on the feeds for us. Okay, so if you catch it live from Recovery Addict and or Law and Crime, which are two of the ones that are they also on the Reddit. They also have one. Mommy Ramblings is another smaller channel that is also streaming it every day. And the Reddit has those links also listed there. They also have good website, and also the poster. Um, is Suznu, who is a true crime poster on other cases. She's also following, I believe, on the Valo case also. Very good with detail, but has a website too that they use. And they just ask if you're gonna like use or repost the information that you always give them credit. Okay. So please like follow those, like follow her request there because they are doing it all in their own time, So Autistic Shell says she hates when people use mental health to get out of trouble. Um, Sorry, but my mental health, intellectual, and physical disabilities don't make me some monster. And if I were, I'm very sane. So don't expect good treatment. I get it. I don't think especially in her all of her conduct before, although we would say that she's not acting like normal in a lot of ways, she did not act like a normal mom looking or even a stepmom or caretaker looking for a child. when Gannon went missing. She's been avoiding and things like that, but not to the point that she doesn't know right from wrong. They're trying to say if you go to the opening arguments, the defense actually said that she snapped and she took out everything. She took out on Gannon everything that had ever happened to her in her life from her stepfather. Okay, which the brother has testified he knew nothing of it, and the mother never mentioned. But that Letecia had left the home at 16, and there are problems with the father in regards to his relationship with his children in his wife. That he was a drinker, and that did come out. But you know, uh, nothing was ever said. And he claims that Letecia, in all of his dealings with her, had her mental faculties about her at all times. Okay, so you know, in to the point that they thought she was innocent and getting railroaded at the beginning, and the whole family went to her defense. Okay, um, but not now. Once the body was found, and it was found in that suitcase, and he recalls her moving that suitcase herself from one van to the other rental van that with the belongings. He knew she did it. He knew she was covering it. He knew she wouldn't let anyone touch that suitcase but herself. And all of the doubts, all of the information and everything he knew just came to a head. Kind of like when Al Stauch discovered she was lying about where vehicles were, and when he found her in mistrue, so she kept changing her story. They knew something was up, and they couldn't believe her anymore. Al Stauch went so far as to join the investigation the best that he could, and file separate. He actually had her recorded and let the FBI record all her phone conversations. And then, when it got to be too much, he actually filed for divorce and was soon divorced from her. And that process itself was quite a mess, based on things that she was saying and doing. But none of it being not in her own mind. Okay, so if she was sane enough to give consent 2 days after Gannon was missing, she was sane enough to call 911 and report him missing calmly hours after. Okay, she let people into the house. She cleaned up that whole house. Yeah, she's now telling you that she did the crime. So that all that cleanup was done by her. All of that hiding of the evidence was done by her. Well, she wants us all to believe that she just cracked at that time for what? Just an hour or two. And then she got her faculties about her, and instead of turning herself in, she covered up the crime. I don't know. We're going to have to hear expert testimony from the psychiatrist and all about that one. I don't know how it's possible, but I guess if that's what they're going with, we will be hearing testimony on both sides on whether or not she could be legally insane at the time of the crime. And we know she's legally sane now because she passed competency to actually represent herself. You have to pass competency to do that. And in the beginning, she wanted to represent herself. And she passed that competency. So it does become a little odd that all of a sudden now she's not. Well, we'll see. She's, the jury has already asked if they should pay attention to how she looks in the court, and they were told to pay attention to the evidence. Okay, so that is what the judge normally says. I don't even know if he addressed it actually with the jury. I do not recall him actually addressing it to the jury yet. From what I have heard in the last few streams on this case, I can see right through this woman's BS, and she deserves everything she will get. Lock her up and throw away the key. You know what? That happens to be a very popular opinion. Hello, Mary Beth. Yes, crazy cats. I think most people would agree with you. It is kind of hard, this one, to stay a little, to stay biased, uh, to stay not to be biased actually, because it is a child, and the horrendous nature of the crime itself is the detail. It's just horrific, and her behavior alone. I have yet to see anyone out there saying that perhaps she should just spend the rest of her life in a mental institute. I don't think she's going to really like the rest of her life in a mental institute. I don't think it's going to be easier than serving in prison. And like Liam, I think that's going to be a rude awakening. Because it's not like you serve your time there and you get out of the mental institute. This was horrific. The child's life. It's there are different sentencing requirements, okay, and it will be different if they do decide that she was insane at the time of the crime. But I'm curious to see how the defense is going to prove that, because lately, everybody who had anything to do with her, from rental agreements to neighbors to the actual detectives that talked to her, all the way to the nurse and the EMS, everyone says that at the time, on the 27th and the 28th, she was acting within her total faculties. Nobody saw anything wrong. And no one can actually confirm this DID she's talking about, using other names and this, that, and the other. The only other name she used was an abbreviation of her own name, and admitted to Al Stauch, her ex-husband, that she had used a different middle name because she didn't like the middle name Lynn, so she used Taylor. Okay. Now, pretending to be Harley to call to get Harley's stuff back out of the truck doesn't necessarily mean she had DID. It does necessarily mean she was a bit conniving and not saying it was her and trying to get information back, because she thought Harley's not, Harley's not the suspect. I am. So maybe Harley can get all of the stuff from the car back. But no, all of it stays, regardless, but that doesn't mean DID, pretending to be somebody else on the phone to manipulate the police officers. That's not actually proof of it. uh, I would think Crazy Cats, yes, it's going to be like not exactly pleasant if she does get convicted. She's not exactly going to have a cushy time of it, I think, wherever she ends up. uh, well, because really she is going to be sentenced one way or another. She admits to the crime. She's not walking away from this. It's just, how will her punishment be dealt out, and what will that punishment entail for a length of time? Well, justice will be done for Gannon, and it's just the severity of it that we are actually looking at with this case. Then on that, I think I'm going to end, and I will talk to you all tomorrow when we do Lori Vallow. And then on Saturday, we will be doing What the Effery, and kind of let down our hair and get rid of this like depressing trial stuff for a while. Thank you all for tolerating 2 hours of monotonous testimony, but I think it's important you know what they're actually presenting out there. Put your questions on the back of the video if you didn't get a chance to ask in the chat, or if you're watching at a later date and you have got something you want addressed. Please communicate with me back there. And as always, everybody, go on, have a great night.